Donald Trump and his administration have changed what it means to walk down the street in America. 374 days ago, an American citizen did not need to worry about carrying a passport or worry that they would be pinned to the ground for being unable to prove that their hometown was in fact the only home they have ever known.
Because we really have to break this down. Adam Schiff walked in like he was auditioning for a dystopian Netflix special. Dark tone, dramatic pauses. America has changed, monologue energy like ominous piano music was about to fade in. He framed immigration enforcement like it was the opening scene of some authoritarian thriller. And then Senator Kennedy basically said, in plain Southern English, "Sir, that's called enforcing the law." Schiff tried to turn immigration officers into villains and routine federal enforcement into some authoritarian horror story. Kennedy brought it back to earth with Civics 101 and a truckload of common sense. The hypocrisy was screaming, but the Constitution was louder. If you're tired of the media spin and want the real breakdown of what actually happened in that room, hit like, subscribe, and don't move. Let's watch the full clip before I give you the full breakdown. Like federal agents were suddenly
the loss of life in Minneapolis was a tragedy, and I'm sorry it happened. Number two, this is the second thing that I know. You don't have to be Einstein's cousin. You don't have to be a senior at Caltech to know that illegal immigration is illegal. Duh. It's illegal. And those of us who believe that no one is above the law, we all say we believe that. I believe it. No one, those of us who say that no one is above the law have to concede that people in our country illegally are not above the law either. The law applies to them as well. Our immigration statutes are not second-tier laws. They matter just as much as the other statutes that have been passed by the elected members of Congress. And just like the other laws, the immigration laws have consequences and should have consequences if you violate them. Third and final point. You have the right to protest in America. Let me say that again. You have the right to protest in America. You do not have the right to protest violently. And in fact, violence, as you protest, undermines the morality of the thing that you're protesting over. Let me say that again. Violence, if you choose violence when you protest, that undermines the morality of the movement that you say your movement is based upon. You know who else understood that? Dr. King. King understood it. Gandhi understood it. Mandela understood it. Violently protesting, not protesting, but violently protesting undermines the morality that you say your cause is built upon. It's also dangerous. It's dangerous as it's dangerous and it's stupid. It's 12-piece bucket of stupid. Because when you protest violently, when you interfere with a cop or an ICE officer, it's not going to end well. It's not. Under the best of circumstances, these officers are trying to enforce federal law. And the people with respect to whom they're trying to enforce federal law are in most cases, I'm not going to say all cases, but in most cases are criminals. Not criminals because they're here illegally, though that too is a violation of our law, but criminals because they have violated other laws, in many cases felonies. And those ICE officials, those cops are scared. They're scared. They're dealing with someone who could be armed, someone who could be dangerous. So you've got a powder keg. And when protesters choose to protest violently and harass those ICE officials and blow whistles in their ears and block their way and spit in their faces and curse them and curse their children, they're giving off sparks in a powder keg. And it's not going to end well in many cases. I'm sorry we're at this point.
Now that you've seen the whole exchange, let's stop pretending this was complicated. Senator Kennedy was absolutely right, and Adam Schiff knew it. Schiff tried to turn immigration enforcement into a horror movie. Agents walking the streets, citizens afraid, training hours thrown around like scary statistics. It was narrative theater. But Kennedy walked in with one devastatingly simple point. Illegal immigration is illegal. You don't need a PhD. You don't need Einstein's cousin. It's right there in the word. Illegal. Here's the part Democrats don't like to say out loud. They constantly repeat that no one is above the law. They chant it like a slogan. But when it comes to immigration law, suddenly it's optional. Suddenly enforcement is oppression. Suddenly federal statutes passed by Congress are treated like suggestions scribbled on a napkin. Kennedy stripped that down to its core. Immigration law is not second-tier law. It's federal law. And federal law has consequences. That's not cruelty. That's civilization. Then came the protest point, and this is where Schiff's whole moral framing cracked. You absolutely have the right to protest. That's sacred. But you do not have the right to protest violently, harass officers, interfere with enforcement, or escalate tension into chaos. Kennedy's powder keg analogy wasn't dramatic. It was reality. You mix volatile situations with reckless behavior, and it doesn't end well. That's not oppression. That's physics. What Schiff was really doing was more dangerous than policy disagreement. He was trying to redefine enforcement itself as immoral. Once you convince people that enforcing the law is evil, the next step is targeting the people who enforce it. That's not reform. That's intimidation dressed up as compassion. Kennedy didn't yell. He didn't grandstand. He didn't need a soundtrack. He delivered a simple truth Democrats can't dodge. Either laws matter or they don't. Either Congress sets immigration policy or mob pressure does. You can't scream rule of law one day and then flinch when the law is actually enforced the next. That's why this moment hit. It wasn't flashy. It was fundamental. Schiff brought drama. Kennedy brought clarity. And in a country built on laws, clarity wins every time.